Hello, this is Food Offensive Weekly News for April 22nd, 2013, and I'm just about caught up. I haven't been in front of the camera in a while, but I've been doing the weekly update every single week and hopefully keeping you up to date on some things that are going on. Maybe you don't have time to scour through the articles and things like I do each week, but you want to watch this in a quick video. A half hour or less is what I aim for, and putting it up on local cable here in Denver. But obviously you might be watching this on YouTube, so you can see it any time here as well. But I have a few topics to cover this week, as I try to do, and of course we're going to get into some GMO news as always. There's some new things that have come out this week, and some action alerts concerning that. And also the first story this week is going to be concerning our water. You know, as a chef, that's why I do this every week. It keeps me up to date on things and helps me get the word out. And I really just want to be free as far as, my personal liberty, my finances, everything. And I want to be able to eat food and serve food to others that I know is safe and I know is healthy. And when it comes to water, that's a big issue as well. I've been wanting to do a series of special reports on the fluoride that's in most water in America. Is over 60%, I believe, of our water is fluoridated here in the United States. I know for sure. I'm not sure about around the world, but that's a big issue. And when you're cooking food, and as a chef, I know that there's a lot of water involved with that. So that water is, containing a lot of things that could be potentially harmful to us. And there's some stories that came out this week. Some reporting done concerning chlorinated water and pesticides, and those items being linked to food allergies. So it's really not even about the fluoride this week, but it's going to be concerning other things in our water that I have, kind of overlooked in the past, just focusing on fluoride and nothing else. But there's obviously some links to other issues with things in our water. And this first article kind of got me down this path this week, and this first segment that I'm covering it with the water is from naturalnews.com. David Gutierrez, a staff writer there, published this article on Friday, April 19th, and basically covering this whole issue of chlorinated water and pesticides in the water being linked to food allergies. And he starts out by saying, a chemical used in pesticides, antibacterial soap, and water chlorination increases people's risk of developing food allergies, according to a study conducted by researchers from the American College of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology, or the ACAAI, and published in the college's journal Annals of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology. He says, our research shows that high levels of dichlorophenol containing pesticides can possibly weaken food tolerance in some people, causing food allergies. And this chemical is also commonly found in pesticides used by farmers and consumer insect and weed control products, as well as tap water. So it's possibly, I would say, in the tap water because of the runoff from the farming and the water used in the farming process and pesticides. But it's possibly not like fluoride, where it's actually deliberately added to the water. It says this number of people suffering from allergies in the United States, they're quoting about 15 million people are suffering from food allergies. And, as a chef, I cook for people professionally all day. And so I see that. I see a lot of gluten intolerance building up. I see a lot of, specific food allergies just to specific products or intolerances to, say, dairy and things like that. But this says that the number has increased has increased 18% between 1997 and 2007. So over a 10-year period, we've seen an 18% increase in food allergies. And obviously, we really should look into the reasons for this. There's got to be a correlation. And the same thing with cancer being up 1,000%. And autism being off the charts from 1 in 27,000 something children to 1 in less than 50 children now. There's got to be a correlation here, whether it's the environment, the food, the vaccines, the combination of all of them. They could all work together to cause these problems. But for food, dealing with food and talking about what I do here is the link between, what's going on with our diet and the results of that, the health effects, the ill health effects. But it says both food allergies and environmental pollution are increasing in the United States. So they're looking at a correlation between those two. The rate of food allergies among participants with high urine levels of dichlorophenols was 80% higher than in the general population. So there's an 80% increased risk. The immune system begins developing in fetuses and continues its development through childhood, he said. Therefore, it is plausible that exposure to these pesticides during this development could alter the immune system in ways that could increase the risk of allergies. This is from lead researcher Elena Gershaw. Some of these quotes here, but concerning the immune system being developed, this is an issue with the children being, allergic to peanuts and things like that, and especially in children, it is a big issue, and that's why I spend more money buying higher quality food and organic food because of that reason. Because I'm trying to give my daughter a head start, and also at the same time, my wife and I eating better as well as much as we can in the times that we can control it. And so this is a key issue. He says, again, exposure to these pesticides during this development could alter the immune system in ways that could increase the risk of allergies. So, and then it goes on, avoiding chlorinated water could help reduce this exposure. But he does say, he warns that pesticides are probably a much more significant source. Therefore, he recommends eating fruits and vegetables that have been exposed to fewer chemicals. So, of course, eating organic, you would be able to avoid that, at least if those foods were truly organic. That's still, something we got to watch out too. Antibacterial products such as soaps, toothpaste, cosmetics, etc., containing the chemical triclosan are another significant source of dichlorophenol exposure for many people. And it says triclosan often breaks down into dichlorophenol. And in this study is not the first link to chemicals to allergies. There was one in 2010 that a European respiratory journal talking about chlorinated pools as well. So, and I just would say the chlorine, we live in the city, and running our daughter's bathwater, you can smell a very strong chlorine. Sometimes it's worse than others. I don't know what causes it or what, but you definitely can. When you can literally smell it, it's not as strong as a swimming pool, but I would say too much. And so that kind of ties in with this article from the Mail Online. This was linked to by that article from Natural News. And even though their article, the Natural News article was published this week, is how I found this. But Nick McDermott of the Mail Online published this in December of 2012, kind of referring to some of the same data. But I wanted to show you here. There's a picture of a faucet with the water dripping out of it, and under there, the caption for the picture says, "Much of the water supply in Britain is chlorinated to kill germs, although experts say it is at much lower levels than in the U.S." So once again, America, we've always been the best at many things. Well, now we're the best at the bad things too, and it's out of control. So I just wanted to point that out. I thought that was interesting. And some other things, this article, of course, being out of the UK, the Mail Online, they have some other studies concerning, British households. So I wanted to point those out too as well if you're watching from there or have interest in that. Studies also estimate that 4% of children have a food allergy. This is over in the UK, it looks like. They're saying up to 10 million adults having food allergies or, intolerances. And also this article it says they point out for British households, at least certain common household products are more likely to be sources of dichlorophenol than tap water. So they're blaming the chemicals in household products, and of course it does say, the triclosan products, which is what the Natural News article pointed out as well. The lipstick, face washes, toothpaste, kitchen utensils, etc. are major culprits for that. Now this Professor Colburn, this article cites as for some of this information. He says currently in the UK, consumer exposure to dichlorophenol via tap water is considered to be minimal. In the U.S., generally, chlorination is known to be less well controlled and relatively high doses of chlorine are used, so it would be reasonable to consider the risk of exposure to be generally higher. In the UK, exposure is more likely to come from other non-tap water sources, so it's kind of the same thing that the Natural News article spoke about as well, but I just wanted to point out the fact that our water is, here in the U.S. anyway, seems to be more chlorinated than that of the UK. And CBS News also referenced this the same time, December 2012, talking about food allergies and pesticides in produce, things like that. And so it contains a lot of the same information, so I won't go through that, but I wanted to point out that mainstream news is also talking about pesticides in tap water linked to food allergy risk. So they're pointing that out as well. And like I said, I would get into the GMO news this week, and of course, that's always a hot topic. And there was some things this week, published articles around April 15th of this week, and throughout the week being covered by all the main sites, for food freedom sites, other sites that cover food news and things like that, and talking about a study that reveals a new study revealing GMO corn to be highly toxic and also nutritionally deficient. There's a Natural Society.com article, and I am having trouble loading it. I got to get a new PDF version of it and with my highlights and notes, but it basically covers it. It also talks about study done by ProfitProAg.com, and that study, I guess, I looked on Profit Pro's website, and it said that they had a disclaimer on there. They weren't really, the study they did, the comparison they did of GMO corn versus non-GMO corn, and I can show it here on screen, but they basically, said that no one was supposed to post it, but actually moms across America posted it, and I'm going to actually look. The Natural Society article has a lot of the information, but I'm going to also look at it. They link to an RT article that has all the same points I want to make, since I can't load the other one, about that Profit Pro study, and basically the moms across America march to label GMOs is what kind of prompted this and the posting of this and how it got out. But this article says, titled "Study Reveals GMO Corn to be Highly Toxic." It was published April 15th and it edited on the 17th. It says, a leaked study examining genetically modified corn reveals that the lab-made alternative to organic crops contains a startling level of toxic chemicals. An anti-GMO website that has posted the results of an education-based consulting company's comparison of corn types, and the results reveal that genetically modified foods may be more hazardous than once thought. The study, the 2012 Corn Comparison Report by Profit Pro, was published recently on the website for Moms Across America March to Label GMOs. And Zin Honeycutt is from that website, and she was basically provided this information by Dedell Seed Company, an Ontario-based farm that touted as being Canada's only non-GMO corn seed company. There's some typos in this article, but it says, according to the analysis, GMO corn tested by Profit Pro contains a number of elements absent from traditional corn, including chlorides, formaldehyde, and glyphosate. While those elements don't appear naturally in corn, they were present in GMO samples to the tune of 60 parts per million, 200 parts per million, and 13 parts per million, respectively. And I'll try to get that a PDF of that and at least link to it, if not show it here on screen for you. But basically, Honeycutt says that the United States EPA mandates that the level of glyphosate in American drinking water not exceed 0.7 parts per million, and adds that organ damage in some animals has been linked to glyphosate exposure exceeding 0.1 parts per million. So they say that the glyphosate draws out the vital nutrients of living things, and GMO corn is covered with it, she adds. And nutritional benefits rampant in natural corn are almost entirely removed from lab-made seeds. For example, non-GMO corn is alleged to have 437 times the amount of calcium in genetically modified versions, and 56 and 7 times the level of magnesium and manganese, respectively. And of course, it talks about the recent passage of the Monsanto Protection Act. It says it was written by a lawmaker that has lobbied for the agri-giant, says biotech companies won't need federal approval to test and plant GMO crops, even if health risks are unknown. The provision would strip federal courts of the authority to halt the sale and planting of an illegal, potentially hazardous GE crop, while the U.S. Department of Agriculture assesses those potential hazards. And further, it would compel USDA to allow continued planting of that same crop upon request, even if in the course of its assessment, the department finds that it poses previously unrecognized risks. So it really is, that name that's been coined for it, the Monsanto Protection Act, really does that. The biotech industry as a whole, it gives them the ability to have basically damage protection. And of course, the action alert this week will pertain to the Monsanto Protection Act as well. But in addition to the recent study that they've done, there's also the Seralini study from 2009, and I have that here from International Journal of Biological Sciences. The comparison of the effects of 3 GM corn varieties of mammalian health. You can see that abstract here. I've highlighted some things and talks about the GMOs and how basically they end the abstract by saying, we conclude that these data highlight signs of hepatorenal toxicity, possibly due to the new pesticides specific to each GM corn. In addition, unintended direct or indirect metabolic consequences of the genetic modification cannot be excluded. And talk about their introduction and the study, the details of how the tests were performed, and they tested 3 different types, and talking about some of the organ damage that was observed and through that. And so, of course, that's an older study, but that's something that we need to, keep going back to and keep reminding ourselves of the dangers of the genetically modified crops. Also, the EFSA had a news story on the 16th of April, how they could not conclude on the safety of a certain GM maize. They give the number here, 98140, due to inadequate data. But I wanted to look at this article briefly to point out one thing here about how they talking about comparative assessment, but it says the European Food Safety Authority, or EFSA, could not conclude on the safety of genetically modified maize 98140 after the applicant failed to supply essential data to allow a full risk assessment to take place. Talking about the comparative assessment, it says that this is a fundamental requirement for the risk evaluation of GMOs. It compares GM plants and the food and feed derived from them with their respective conventional counterparts, known as comparators. The basic assumption of this method, which is required under current European Union legislation for all GMO applications, is that food and feed from conventionally bred plants have a history of safe use. They can therefore serve as a baseline for the risk assessment of food and feed derived from GM plants. So, isn't that a novel concept? Actually, intelligently, testing something before we actually put it out as just generally recognized as safe, or testing it for just a short enough amount of time where it doesn't show its true colors. And that's something else I wanted to point out about the article, the research paper I was just looking at, the comparison of effects of the corn on the varieties of mammalian health. It points out that in the introduction, the need to have testing done on the longest time scales involving the organ system analysis. It says, unfortunately, this has been a challenge since usually these are regulatory tests performed confidentially by industry prior to commercialization of their GM crops, pesticides, drugs, and chemicals. So this is the problem when you've got a company that is attempting to prove that their product is safe, and they're the ones doing the testing on it. I mean, I don't know how much clearer it needs to be to us that there's an issue here with the way that our process works. And along with that, they give thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to politicians to help them push their agenda through. And that kind of really brings me into the action alerts section and final segment of my show this week. And the Organic Consumers Association put out an action alert, an article titled "Kill the Monsanto Protection Act, Force Senator Roy Blunt to Resign." Now, last week I covered the Mother Jones article talking about how Senator Roy Blunt, the Republican from Monsanto's home state of Missouri, how he seems to be Monsanto's man, and he was the one that took responsibility for getting the Monsanto Protection Act to pass and putting it out there and pushing it through. And so this article talks about that. He says he's been labeled prodigious porkmeister by the Providence Journal, Senator Earmark by the Wall Street Journal, and most corrupt by the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. Senator Roy Blunt, a Republican from Monsanto's home state of Missouri, has been called a magnet for PAC money from the agribusiness industry, raking in over $243,000 in 2010 alone. So my number that I reported last week wasn't even, I overlooked that in that article. It was only probably a fourth of what they're saying here. So it says biotech's investment in Senator Blunt has paid off handsomely. He teamed up with Monsanto lobbyists and helped craft the language for the Farmer Assurance Provision, which is now aptly named the Monsanto Protection Act. And it says the Monsanto Protection Act places biotech companies above the law and corporate commercial interests above the interest of the public health. And it talks about the dangers of it. Senator John Tester is a Democrat from Montana. He's the one that opposed the provision. If you saw the Jon Stewart's hilarious critique of the Monsanto Protection Act that I showed last week, a clip from that, it shows Senator John Tester from the floor giving his opposition to it. And here's one quote. He says, "These provisions are giveaways, pure and simple, and will be a boon worth millions of dollars to a handful of the biggest corporations in the country." And Senator Blunt, of course, claimed responsibility for the Monsanto Protection Act. As I said before, this article does point out there is good news. It says, like the spending bill that it's attached to, this Protection Act expires September 30th. So Organic Consumers Association points out the fact that the best way for us to make sure that the bill doesn't survive is to force Senator Blunt to resign. And there's a sample letter here you can send. It's quite powerful, the wording of it and everything, but you can see it here talking about how Roy Blunt has violated his oath of office and approval of plants that are designed to be sprayed with the toxic 2,4-D herbicide I've covered before of the Agent Orange infamy, etc., etc. You can send that, that form letter to them. Also, they put out this other Other article 2, April 19th, Organic Consumers Association calls for resignation of Senator Roy Blunt, Republican from Missouri, author of the Monsanto Protection Act. And that covers that. You can see that there, but also, of course, that form letter I showed you in the previous article is the one you want to follow. And along with that, Missouri, the state of Missouri, this action alert from farmtoconsumer.org, on the state level, Missouri's Monsanto Protection Act, it says take action to prevent passage in legislators. So they're trying to push this through, and this caption here shows the corn on the table with the American flags. Can't get any more Americana than that. It says Monsanto may be headquartered in St. Louis, but the entire state does not belong to them. And so this is kind of the same sentiments here as far as it goes to the Monsanto Protection Act. It basically says, please oppose what is now being called the Missouri Monsanto Protection Act and contact your legislators. This is the House Joint Resolution 11. And it talks about forever protecting, quote, agricultural technology and, quote, modern and traditional farming practices in Missouri. Forever. It says this bill will benefit biotech and mega farm companies, not Missouri small family farms, nor consumers seeking wholesome, locally grown food. And they put a little bit about this bill. It says legislation cloaked to protect Monsanto and the big ag. It says the practices shall be forever guaranteed in this state. Agricultural technology and modern and traditional livestock production and ranching. And they say that agricultural, quote, agricultural technology usually means the biotech industry. It says, yes, spider goats, eel salmon, cow humans, mouse pigs, and whatever else they come up with in the future would be protected, quote, forever. That's a very, very long time. And worse, the proposed language for the official ballot title does not portray the true content of the amendment. Voters would simply read the following to vote yes or no, and this is what it would say on their voting machine or whatever they use. It says, shall the Missouri Constitution be amended to ensure that the right of Missouri citizens to employ modern farming and ranching practices and equipment shall not be infringed? So, of course, reading that, you would say, sure, but deeper down, that's a problem if you voted yes on that, because what's hidden in there. This website has a proposed language that would protect family farms. This is the proposed language that should be on the ballot. And they've crossed out what's there and changed it to what they think it should be. It says the right of farmers and ranchers to engage in direct trade with consumers shall be forever guaranteed in this state. And the practices that secure independent family farms' ability to save seed, preserve livestock, bloodlines, or impede their access to market. So, of course, Monsanto would like you to buy the Terminator seed that, you have to buy the seed every year from them and you're not allowed to save it. So it's another egregious thing that's about to happen, and if you're in the state of Missouri and have the opportunity to stop this or vote against it, please do. And that's what they're looking at this week for our action alerts. But that's all the time we have this week, so until next time, this has been Food Offensive Weekly News. Thank you for joining me.